Welcome, everyone. And good day or good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Brittany Brown. I'm a senior program associate at the Vera Institute of Justice Restoring Promise Initiative. And today you'll learn more about our initiative's newest project, Design for Dignity, funded by the Bureau of Justice Assistance, aimed at transforming prison cultures, climates, and spaces. This webinar will provide information on how your agency can partner with us to do this important work. A few things to note: closed captioning is available. Also, today's webinar is being recorded, and we'll provide the link to that recording in a few days. As we go through our presentation, please feel free to type questions as they come up for you in the QA box found in the bottom bar of your Zoom screen. We'll also ask that you pay attention to the chat, as we'll be sharing additional resources throughout the presentation, to include the RFP link so that you can apply to do this work with us, as well as a Corrections 1 article that we just released. So those will be coming into your chat now. Before we get started, we would love to see and hear who's joining us today. So we're going to do a quick check-in via the chat. And we ask that you put your name, your title, and your state. So if you put in the chat where you're joining us from, I see New Jersey, Wisconsin, North Carolina, DC, New York State, wonderful, Arkansas, North Carolina, wonderful. As those continue to come in, I'm going to introduce our speakers for today. So in order of appearance, again, myself, I'm Brittany Brown, Senior Program Associate with the Restoring Promise Initiative at Vera. Then we have Ryan Shanahan, our Initiative Director of Restoring Promise. Clinique Chapman, Associate Director of Advocacy and Policy at Restoring Promise, and the Project Lead for Design for Dignity. We'll hear from Selma Jokovic, Associate Director of Research at Restoring Promise. Scott Semple, former Commissioner for the Connecticut Department of Corrections. Sharon Taylor, Research Associate for Restoring Promise. And I'd also like to acknowledge Alex Stolchevic, our BJA Policy Advisor that's joining us today. Thank you so much for being on the line today, Alex. Moving on to our agenda. First, we'll provide an introduction of Restoring Promise Initiative. Then we'll discuss what's ahead, which is what we're here for, the Design for Dignity project. We'll then hear reflections from Scott Semple, who we partnered with to open the very first Restoring Promise units in Connecticut. We'll then walk you through the RFP application and selection process, followed by a question and answer portion, and then finally we'll close with next steps. So if we're all ready to move forward, without further ado, I'll turn things over to Ryan Shanahan, our Initiative Director for Restoring Promise.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am charged, as Brittany said, with introducing you to the Restoring Promise Initiative and how it all started before handing it over to my colleagues who will go through Design for Dignity in more detail. Before I jump in, I want to just acknowledge the heaviness that's going on around the world, and specifically the news that we are getting out of North Carolina. I see there are some folks from North Carolina joining us today. And so we had 2 law enforcement officers lose their lives in North Carolina. And that kind of media attention reminds us why we do this work, because we want everyone to feel safe who lives and works inside of prisons. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we came to believe that our approach does just that and helps everyone be safer. But I wanted to acknowledge that before moving on. So Restoring Promise started in 2016 with this idea that we could have everyone who works or lives or incarcerated in facilities feel safer, feel a better sense of purpose, and feel more part of a community by creating housing units grounded in human dignity. And we started with young adults because we knew that they were at this, they created a unique set of challenges and opportunities for departments of correction. And as Brittany mentioned, our first partnership was with the Connecticut Department of Corrections, where in January of 2017, we opened the True Unit, our first housing unit grounded in human dignity for young adults at the Cheshire Correctional Facility, a maximum security facility in Connecticut for men. And within a few months, we knew we were on to something really powerful and really positive for the staff and incarcerated people who were involved. And so we wanted to see, is this just the luck that comes with working with a great group of people at Cheshire Correctional Facility? And so we tried to see if that taking the same approach would have similar results and similar immediate and effective impact on a women's facility in Connecticut. And from there, we've really been able to expand quite quickly to a really geographically and politically diverse set of states using a similar approach, all with the intention of creating these pilot housing units grounded in human dignity with staff that get additional training, and they're partnered with incarcerated people who are serving long or life sentences, who as a team come together to support young adults. And we are currently in partnerships with departments of corrections in South Carolina, in Colorado, North Dakota, and Idaho. And I told you that we felt like something was different, and we were experiencing a lot of great positive feedback, and we can go to the next slide. But we wanted to understand more. So we collected our own data in each of these very diverse settings, and we were finding that staff morale was incredibly high who worked on the unit, that everyone was starting to feel safer. They felt like they could express themselves. They felt part of a larger community that was giving back. And those feelings and experiences were powerful. They were palpable. You could feel a different energy whenever you walked onto a Restoring Promise unit, whether it was in South Carolina or Colorado or North Dakota. But we wanted some concrete, quantitative evidence. And so we asked the South Carolina Department of Corrections to partner with us on a randomized control trial. And Jaya put that link in the chat for you so you can read more. A randomized control trial, really briefly, it's the gold standard in evidence of whether or not something is effective. And after going through this randomized control trial with South Carolina Department of Corrections, we can confidently say that Restoring Promise and housing units for young adults that are organized in this way around human dignity does result in safer spaces. So young adults on the Restoring Promise housing unit were 73% less likely to be involved in violence and 86% less likely to be sent to solitary confinement than their peers in the general population. And so, you know, we were really excited to find that this was, the evidence supported what we knew was different and positive. And so I really encourage you to read more on that policy brief. And what I want to share next on the next slide is all of the themes. Like I told you that we were in these really geographically and politically different spaces. We were in medium secure prisons, maximum secure prisons, prisons for men, prisons for women. And what we found were a really strong set of themes that supported what we think of as the secret sauce that makes these communities stick together and have such great outcomes. And we're going to get into many of these concepts in the upcoming slides with my colleagues, Clinique and Selma. But one of the things that was really clear to us was that we were onto something, right? That if you have officers trained to build relationships across young people and incarcerated people, that you were going to get safer spaces. If you used restorative practices, if you used mentorship for young adults, and you tried to create a community that was a little bit more normal and less institutional, you can have that same safety that you would have, as we all imagine, for Department of Corrections. So I'm gonna start to pass it over to Clinique and Selma, because what they're gonna do is tell you how we took these themes and thought through if this works for young adults who are a real challenge and opportunity for departments of corrections. What would it look like? What elements could we scale to everyone who works or is incarcerated inside of a state agency? And I hope that this gets you really excited. So that's also their charge. They're going to give you a lot of information, but they're also going to get you really excited to work with us. And with that, I'll say thank you, and I'll see you in the Q&A.
Thank you, Ryan. And I'm here to get you excited, so that's my job. Okay, I love it. As previously mentioned, my name is Clinique Chapman, and I am the Associate Director of Policy and Advocacy with Vera's Restoring Promise Initiative. I'm leading this project and will be your point of contact moving forward. I'm really happy to be here with you all as we embark upon just the great work that we're about to do together. As Ryan mentioned, Restoring Promise has been working alongside those most impacted and that staff, that's incarcerated folks, since 2016 to transform prison environments and cultures, really using human dignity as our North Star. We've seen what works. Ryan talked about that a bit, right? We've seen not only what works in terms of when you walk into a Restoring Promise unit. If you've ever been on a Restoring Promise unit, feel free to actually put that in the chat. If you've ever been to Restoring Promise unit, you know that it feels different when you walk into one of our units. But we've also seen it in the data, right? We see that this data supports the approach. And Vera and our various state partners have experienced what can happen when dignity, purpose, healing, and safety, and just like all of those things combined are centered in our policies and our practices. So the transformative work of the Restoring Promise House units led to the development of a set of guiding dignity principles. The principles, many of you may have seen this before. We've been at CLA conferences. We've shared them in various kind of methods. It was published a few months ago, and my colleague has dropped a link for those who may not have seen it before. But it's really a culmination of 7 years of learning through collaboration, research, trial and error, and implementation. These principles were formed in partnership with each of our current state partners that Ryan mentioned earlier, as well as national organizations. I actually see some of our national partners that we work with in the chat. They were informed by best practices in the US justice system and European models. The principles outline ways that our partners can align correctional practices and policies with 7 principles. And you see that here on your screen. Those are safety, human dignity, staff morale and well-being, fairness, purpose, family community partnership, and the last but not least is transparency. And so with these principles, you'll see them more and more with Design for Dignity, because they will be serving as kind of a guiding beacon for us on this project, on this new project. And so speaking of new project, you all are probably like, okay, we get it. We've heard about Restoring Promise. What is the new project? What is this new opportunity? And what does that partnership entail? Well, glad you asked. Funded in consultation with BJA, Vera's new project, Design for Dignity, is an expanded partnership with 2 state partners. We'll be selecting 2 state partners to work with us, implementing sustainable changes that ground corrections, policies, and practices in human dignity. Really the goal of making prisons safer, more humane spaces for the people who work in them and are incarcerated in the prisons. We aim to transform prison cultures, climates, and spaces using the dignity principles, as I mentioned before, as that guide, right? It's kind of creating a roadmap for us. And so D4D, and D4D is our acronym. I'm always tickled by the field because we have so many acronyms. So I'm just going to add another one in there. Design for Dignity is also D4D, is short. And so it takes the most successful and sustainable elements from the young adult housing units to impact the entire system. And so why the entire system? Why everyone? Like, why are we making that shift? It's really simple because everyone, how do I say it? Everyone deserves that level of human dignity, whether working inside of or living inside of prisons. And so we're really trying to take that impact of the Restoring Promise housing units and that feel, that dignity that everyone deserves to everyone. And so we'll be doing that through three key avenues, we're calling them three key avenues of our change, right? And so the way in which we'll be driving the change will be the three areas through policies, trainings, and allocation of resources. And so we'll be reviewing and transforming policies together. And I'll say together a million times today, because this really is a project that you all, DOCs, will own. We'll just be kind of there along the way to assist you all in guiding it. And so we'll be reviewing and transforming policies together. We'll be reviewing resource allocations and making feasible, keyword is feasible, recommendations to ensure that those policy changes, align within the budgets as well. And then reviewing and adjusting and creating DOC training programs based on the changes that we've made on our policies. And so really those three areas of work is how we'll focus. The policies and transformative work will be centered around 4 focus areas. And so now we have our 3 avenues of change. And so now we're moving into our focus areas, right? And so as you can see on our screen, we have 4 focus areas. These focus areas will help us to kind of organize the work, right? And so they were born out of the work of Restoring Promise housing units. And we'll take the best of what we know, and we know that it's effective, and integrate that into the collaborative work that we'll do with our site partners. And so these 4 focus areas are dynamic security, restorative practices, family engagement and partnership, and normality. And just a little bit about operationalizing these terms. And also you all will get so much information in your email in the next few days after we get done with the webinar. So you'll get some of this information as well as like the video, just to kind of recap. But dynamic security, it refers to the relational, right? The relational side, the proactive and flexible approach to corrections. It's a shift in how we view one another, how we engage as staff and incarcerated folks, and just really allowing us to reimagine how we view and accomplish creating safer prison environments. And then restorative practices is something that Restoring Promise, it's just really integral piece of the puzzle. That sauce that Ryan talked about is a really special sauce that Restoring Promise brings. And so really using restorative practices to address how we handle conflict, how we celebrate one another. It's not just, the negative things, right? It's all of those things, and how we center healing and accountability within all those things that we do. And restorative justice specifically is one of our key facets that we found, and research has shows is very effective for us. And so then we move to family engagement and partnership. And that is simply, how do we partner with families? How do we ensure the connectivity between those who are incarcerated and their family members is not lost while they're spending time in the prison? We want to ensure that the communities are still connected and the families are still connected, because studies also tell us, and we know, that the more connectivity while people are incarcerated, the better off for all of us in terms of our community, their families, societies, and generations to come. And so we really focus on that as well. And the normality. Many of you might have heard of this, as well as we all kind of are studying the European models and the approach. But this refers to the principles, practices, and policies that allow us and those inside to resemble normal life as much as possible, which creates dignity for those folks who are experiencing it. And so we'll collect and review data based on these focus areas. So it's the 4 focus areas. And then the work that we'll do together will actually prioritize which of the focus areas we'll use our 24 months together to transform. We all know that culture change takes time, right? Like, we didn't get here overnight. We won't get into a different space overnight. And so it'll take time. But during the course of 24 months, we'll narrow in and hone in on which of those will we provide the TTA, and ensuring that the other areas for sustainability purposes will provide you with a package, right? A toolkit. And I'll talk more about that sustainability section a little bit later. But we'll ensure that you all have all that you need to continue to move the needle forward on the other focus areas as well. And so now that we have just kind of this greater understanding of what design for dignity is, how we'll be doing that work, the bodies of, buckets. And I told myself I wouldn't say buckets of work, but I love the buckets, right? The focus areas are buckets. Like these are the buckets that we'll be focusing on together. But now that we have that out of the way, I really want to talk about the opportunity that's presented to you all today. You are here for a reason. You are here because you're intrigued and you want to know more, and you understand that, it may take more to apply to our strategies and approaches. And so we want to ensure that we provide this opportunity with you so that you better understand the application process as well. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But the basic opportunity is partnering with us. And so that's Vera and BJA. 2 state partners will be selected to provide and to receive from us training and technical assistance in a targeted data collection to ensure strategies that create safer, more humane prisons. And my colleague, Selma, will actually, Associate Director of Research, Selma, will be sharing more about that data piece as we move through the presentation as well. The biggest thing, though, is that there's no cost. There's no cost. There's a no-cost opportunity to receive our training and technical assistance services. It's free. It's free to you, right? And so let's try it. Let's try this together. Let's do this together. Over the course of those 24 months, Vera will guide a work group that is comprised of staff, leadership, and those who are incarcerated. We are very, very connected to what can happen when all impacted folks are around the table. And so we want to make sure that we're sharing that space to create change together, centered around those who are most impacted. And so that is the opportunity. And we'll talk a little bit more now about how does that opportunity actually span over those 24 months and what that timeline looks like just a little bit. And so as you can see on your screen, we have a beautiful diagram to show you just kind of our stages. It's 3 stages, but within those stages, I'll share kind of a little bit of what work will happen within that time, those time frames. Once partners are selected and MOU contracts are solidified, we'll spend about 4 to 6 months together in the learning and strategy design phase. This is the stage of work where we start to build relationship, we start to understand. And so us as Vera start to understand our new site partner, like, where are you all in terms of your current corrections culture? And then let's sit together and dream. Let's envision what it looks like to actually do this work together, and what culture would you like to see created at the end of this project, right? And so we'll map that out. And then after data collection, we'll chart a path together that provides kind of a roadmap, a guide, a GPS system for what we'll do along the way together. And so we'll use those avenues that we mentioned, policies, resources, and training to really impact the work in those specific areas. We'll also have a policy workshop. So it's kind of a set of series of workshops that will walk through the, the work groups will walk through, through the importance of policies, when making changes that impact all people. Like, how do you review and rewrite policies from a human dignity perspective? That's what we'll be bringing to the table to ensure that you all know how to do that and are equipped with the tools and knowledge and strategies and the know-how to actually shift your policies in that way, from that lens. Those series of workshops will really be very beneficial as we do this work together. And then once we have our priority areas focused and narrowed in and identified, we'll then roll up our sleeves and get to work. And that is the change management phase. Very exciting phase of work. This is where we'll spend the bulk of our time together. And so over the course of about 17 to 18 months within this phase, we'll create change. Like, we are going to create change together. We're going to review policies. We're going to transform policies. We're going to make recommendations and adjustments to your budget, to your line items, to ensure that this is the change that you said you wanted to create in the policies. Awesome. Does our budget reflect that, right? Does it align with what we say we want to do? And then we'll take that the next step further in terms of sustainability, of saying, well, now that our training and now that our policies are changed, our staff need to know how to actually implement this. And that happens through your training directors, right? And so we'll work with your training teams from across the state and other integral folks that will have, a role in implementation. And we'll work with them to ensure that the trainings are transformed to match the policies that we've now changed. And so creating new modules, training modules. And then that takes us to stage 3. It's amazing how quickly, I think 2 years will go, but we're going to do so much work within those 2 years. It's all about ensuring the hard work your team has done in the previous stage in stage 3, right? We want to make sure that we are assessing what we've done. Selma will talk about that in a second, and ensuring that it's sustainable changes. And then we'll also equip you all with the tools such as template policies, training modules, and toolkits overall. Like, we'll leave you with a humongous package of just sustainability to ensure that your team is able to continue to move the needle forward in the way in which you all have laid out in the initial plans that we will develop together. And so I've talked a lot, and so I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Selma, Associate Director of Research, to share more with you all about how data collection will be intentionally integrated into our 24 months together.
Thanks so much, Clinique, and hello, everyone. So nice to be in this space with you. So yeah, as Clinique mentioned, data collection will really undergird all of these stages. First, before we begin making any changes, we're going to collect data to conduct an assessment of the current department culture, as Clinique mentioned, as it relates to the dignity principles and specifically those 4 focus areas. The assessment will draw on multiple data sources. So we're going to be administering a prison culture survey to a sample of staff and incarcerated people within the system. We'll be collecting administrative records and doing a document analysis of policy and standard operational procedures, and using all of that together to inform the work plan for the next 18 months and the focus area and policy changes that we're going to prioritize. So this is really going to be a data-driven process. We'll be using the findings from the assessment iteratively throughout the engagement with our partners. So first, it's going to provide us with a starting point for defining the culture change process, and then as a baseline against which to assess progress. As everyone is immersed in the change management stage, my team will collect data throughout the process to examine how changes are developing so that you can promptly address any emerging challenges or issues. The methods we use and the data we collect in this phase will be developed in collaboration with the working group in each state. And those findings will also inform a sustainability plan and recommendations for maintaining the changes that we made, and also charting a path for the future. Collecting information and adapting to lessons learned have been really critical to our work for the past 7 years, right? We've learned a lot and we've evolved from those lessons. And we're excited to continue to learn and grow with our partners in this project designed for dignity. So speaking of partners, as Brittany and Ryan have mentioned throughout this presentation, the inception of Restoring Promise was really thanks to a partnership with the Connecticut Department of Corrections. Former Commissioner Scott Semple had a vision, as I'm sure a lot of you on this call have, and he worked with Vera to make it a reality. Mr. Semple still works very closely with us as a trusted advisor, and while he couldn't be with us today, he shared a message that we'll be playing for you all now. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. My name is Scott Semple. I am the retired Commissioner of Correction from the state of Connecticut, retired in 2019. And I apologize I cannot be with you on this webinar today, but I've been asked to send a message, and it's my pleasure to do so. So really appreciate your interest and curiosity in Design for Dignity. But the big question that comes up is why? Why would we do something like this? What is the benefit? And I think what's really, really important to emphasize is not strictly about incarcerated people. This is about staff, the environment, the culture within your institutions and facilities, and everything that goes along with it, and the good work that you do within your various jurisdictions. The Design for Dignity grant is really important and is an opportunity for your agency to get involved, to partner and collaborate with the Vera Institute of Justice. Back in 2017, I did just that with the Restoring Promise initiative, which was designed to impact emerging adult populations here in Connecticut. It became nationally recognized throughout the country. Many jurisdictions today have implemented this model or some nuance of it, and it's had some fabulous outcomes that have really improved the health and safety for both staff and incarcerated people. I think it's also important for me to emphasize too that Design for Dignity is really all about enhancing conditions and safety for all within correctional systems, for staff, as I mentioned before, and for incarcerated people, and potentially even for their families. If you can envision just a different approach that could overall improve the health and wellness for everyone, would you sign on? And I think through my experience in working with Vera in the past, the answer is yes. And if I had my druthers and didn't retire in 2019, I would have expanded it. I can promise you the outcomes of working with this initiative will have great results. Thank you.
We are so grateful for Scott Semple's partnership. I wish he was here so I could just tell him, but I tell him all the time. We're super grateful for his partnership over the years, and especially as we embark upon this next chapter of the work with Design for Dignity. He shared the why, right, as it relates to DOCs applying and you know, why this opportunity is important. And I really want to emphasize that this transformation process is really led by and for corrections professionals and those who are incarcerated. The work groups will allow the voice of those who are most impacted to be at the forefront and center of the change that we'll all create together. The hard work that you all do and are doing every single day, the strategic plans that you all develop, we want to come in and be an asset. Vera wants to be a value add to your team to ensure that those strategies are rooted in human dignity and assist you all really with pushing forward the change that you all are aiming for on a daily basis. And so with that, let's get to the good stuff. Our RFP application is out. It opened up on April 15th. And the submission deadline is May 29th, 2024. Once you all submit through the portal, actually that should be dropping into the chat box very soon. And if you haven't seen it already, we will contact those for those DOCs for first round virtual interviews with agency leadership and correctional staff. And then you'll see, and that's May 28th through June 7th, sorry. And then you'll see second round of virtual interviews, and that includes those who are incarcerated along with you know, who you identify from the DOC as well. And that's, you know, we'll continue to emphasize just the sharing of solutions with those who are most impacted, right? Let those who are most impacted drive the change that we really want to see inside is what we're here for. And so that includes your correctional staff and those who are incarcerated. And so those second round of virtual interviews will take place June 10th through June 14th, and our team will contact you all to set up scheduling and things of that nature, the logistics of all of that. And then we're hoping by July 1st, the goal is to have all of our two site partners alerted that their proposals have been accepted, and then we would get to work. And so lots of things happening in the next month or two as we move on to just what it looks like to have your application, you know, the selection process. It's really, really important for us to understand that your scores are based on your site's demonstrated readiness to create safer and more humane spaces, execute policy change, like just demonstrated effort and or willingness to do the change, right? And to do the work, the hard work with us. And you'll see, and very important is that the letters of support from stakeholders, specifically governor's offices, is something that we'll require throughout the application process. And those details you can find on the RFP as well. Who will be scoring your applications? I'm a part of that team. My team here at Vera, the Design for Dignity team, as well as our awesome project advisory board members, will be scoring along with BJA. And so you can see on the screen, we have an array of advisory board members, an awesome team. Some of our advisory board members are on this call right now. We're very grateful to be in partnership and in community with DOCs, advisory board members, BJA. There are so many people that are invested in ensuring that this project is a success and that we change and transform prison systems with you all, right? And so you all are leading the work, and you have an entire team, advisory board members and Vera squad and BJA behind you, moving this forward. And so very grateful for you all. Thank you for your interest. I'm going to pass now to my colleague, Sharon Taylor, who will guide us and facilitate the question and answers. We've seen a couple awesome questions come in so far in the chat and within the chat box. If you have others, please add them, and we'll ensure that you all have your questions answered. And we hope to speak with you soon and be in community with you soon. Thank you very much. Passing it to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Clinique, and thank you to all of the other presenters who have shared information today. So the first question we have coming up is, how much interaction with your current Vera partners will we have during the course of this program? Is it just a site visit, or will there be more options for collaboration? Sorry in advance for my child. And Clinique, this one is going to be directed to you.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? My apologies. I was turning my video on. Ryan, did you hear the question?
Yeah,
If
it's
you
around
wanna-
the interaction with
Sorry.
the different sites. So how much interaction will we get to have with the current Restoring Promise sites? And then will there be interaction between the two sites that are chosen for Design for Dignity, if I understood it correctly?
Yes, thank you. I think I actually saw that question in the Q&A as well. Our plan is to create a community, right? And so Restoring Promise, when you join Design for Dignity, you're joining an established community that will come with all that comes with community, right? So there's support, there's network, there's possibilities to visit and tour and connect already existing Restoring Promise housing units. It'll come with potentially looking at policies that are already in place at some of our other sites. And so some of that groundwork that's been done, you'll be able to, connect with wardens and other directors that, are willing to share how change feels when it's happening day to day. And so, yes, you all will be a part of a community. In addition to the other folks that I mentioned, the advisory board will have subject matter experts as well available to you all, depending on, the priority areas that we decide to work on together. So awesome question. And yes, you will be joining a community of folks that will be able to help you navigate this change process.
Thank you for that, Clinique. And the next question we have is, to implement the policies developed in the program, will there be suggestions that will require funds from the department to fully implement the suggestions? And should we budget money for implementation? And I'll pass that back to you, Clinique.
Yes, the training and technical assistance, what BJA is funding, they are funding our work and our support to you all. And so it is at no cost for you all to engage in this process with us. And in terms of implementation and things that nature, I think that would be something that, as we have our interview processes, we can talk more one-on-one and really curate that to the state and really understand what the needs are, where we are currently, and what that will look like. But I think in terms of just kind of general response as it relates to, in order to, if you click apply today at the portal and we say, yes, you're accepted, you do not have to fund anything to work with us. Thank you for that question.
Thanks again, Clinique. And this next question is for you, Salma. Can you provide a bit more information regarding what the data collection would entail?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be administering a survey to incarcerated people and staff or to a sample of incarcerated people and staff in every state department that we partner with. And that's really gonna, how many people we're talking about, and the data collection methods will again be curated, as Clinique said, to each state's technical capabilities and kind of operational contexts. So that's one piece of the data collection. I also mentioned that we'll be collecting administrative records. So our MOU will have an appendix that lays out a data request. And we typically, like to work very closely with the research department in a state to kind of go over a data request. What data do you have currently available? What data from this list do you not have, or in what form do you currently collect this? And we really work, it's a collaboration through and through. So the MOU will definitely cover those two facets and request, data from the agency and access to the agency in order to collect data from folks.
Thank you, Salma. And this is another question to you, Clinique. Are there specific states you are looking to target?
All of them. You all are, and we actually have so many states interested in that are on this call right now, which is so amazing to see. We are interested in reviewing applications for any state that will apply. And I think within, as we go through with our partners and scoring in the rubric, it's really based off the application that you all will submit. And so, yes, we're targeting everyone.
Thank you. And this next question is for you, Ryan. Has staff pushback been an issue with current Restoring Promise DOCs? How is it addressed?
Thank you, Sharon. So on the housing units for young adults that are grounded in human dignity, the staff who work on the unit apply to do that. And so they're raising their hand. They want to try something different. They might be motivated that their calling is to do something a little different than unlock and lock doors. And so they want and are craving this interaction. What we've seen is that as the unit acclimates to the rest of the prison, staff are really intrigued as to what's going on there. And they start to recognize that that unit is calmer, that there aren't a lot of calls to that unit, and they become more intrigued. What is a delicate balance that Design for Dignity won't have to try to navigate is this idea of like, does human dignity come with certain privileges for the staff that other staff aren't getting? Like, do they have access to more information? Do they get more training? Do they, why don't I get that? So for Design for Dignity is really modeled after the idea that we can take some of the core themes that were emerging about what worked. Monique and I were talking about this special sauce, and how do we get more staff access to this? We want staff who are happy, feel safe, feel fulfilled, have a purpose to their work. And we talk a lot about how staff have to put a mask on, right, to come into the prison setting, and that when they get an opportunity to work and build relationships on a Restoring Promise housing unit, that mask gets to come off a little bit. And what we're seeing is the impact of that on their families. So Scott Semple talked about the families of incarcerated people, but what about the families of staff? When you go to work every day with a mask on, it gets harder and harder to take it off. And so Design for Dignity will be exploring ways to really promote staff's entire health and well-being, along with all of the, integrated within all of the topic areas that Clinique identified.
Thanks again, Ryan. Our next question is for you, Clinique. What makes for a strong application?
A strong application would consist of just the demonstrated, I think I mentioned it earlier, just kind of demonstrating that you all have attempted transformation and change before, and or that you are willing to, and why you're at this point. I think really just kind of sharing more about efforts in the past and any strategic approaches that you have for moving forward. I think we are open to, there's a range, right? Like our country is vast, our country is complex. And so every state is not going to look the same in terms of what you all have done in the past or where things are happening currently. But I think just showing willingness is really honestly so much of what we're looking for. We need willing partners to do this work, right? We can't do it alone. And you all, if you're signing up, it means that you would like to partner with us. And so that, that's a great sign for us, that you're even, looking to partner with Vera and BJA to do this work. And so willingness really to create change together. And then I think also I'm most excited about the interview process, to be very frank. I think within the interview process, we get to really see people beyond the paper and pen that we're not submitting using paper and pen anymore, but, see people beyond what's typed on a screen. And so just to be able to get to understand, the challenges and understanding your state, I think that that organic engagement is what I'm looking forward to in the interviews. And so during that process, we'll also be able to provide you all in advance what we might be expecting during some of the, possible just parameters around those interview spaces as well. I hope that answered whoever's question that was.
Thank you, Monique. And so that was the end of the formal questions that were in the Q&A. So if there are any last burning questions while we have a few more minutes, feel free to drop your question in the Q&A now. And as a reminder, we will get back to you with any written responses and make sure to connect with you after if you do have questions after today's webinar. So with that, if there are no more questions, I will be passing it to Brittany to close us out with next steps.
Thank you so much, Sharon, and thank you all to all of our presenters today. Thank you to all of our participants. If you're like me and sometimes the information has to marinate before questions come up, then I just want to invite you all to know that that is perfectly fine. You can always reach out to us via email. You can contact Clinique via the email that's on the screen, as well as it will be put in the chat. We're also including the link to the RFP in the chat. Again, it closes May 29th, so you all get those applications in. Design for Dignity is something that we truly believe in, really centering in the name dignity, human dignity, meaning that just because we are humans and exist, we have value. And we believe that. And because you all showed up here today, it lets me know that you believe that. And we hope that you can see this project, the possibilities in it for yourselves, for your staff, for the incarcerated individuals in your systems. We hope that you can see this as a way to help create safer and more humane prison culture where you work, and in the spaces that you occupy and work in. And so we'll be sending out an email that includes the recording and all the information and resources shared today. And again, please just reach out for any questions that come up for you post webinar. And if that is it, I just want to say again, thank you for everyone. We look forward to working with you, reading your applications, and seeing the beautiful things we can do together. Take care, everybody.